love that he threw that dryer ball. Yeah. That's about my speed. Now I'd like to welcome Lee Drescher, who is not only my friend and former tennis player partner when I would play, but a wonderful storyteller. Come on up, Lee.
Hi. Oh, can I lower?
Yes.
I will heal a little bit and then that's a little bit of what it's going to be about.
Bit of a mechanic. Okay, that's good. When I was little, my grandmother told me that I should be good. And I've always tried to be good. In fact, in my younger years, I was quite timid. I'm still quite timid. And when my children were young, I kind of got houseophobia, and I just like to stay home with them. And we only had one car, and I just let my husband take it, and I would cart my kids around on a bicycle, which was probably more dangerous than a car, or walk them around town. But then my kids grew older, and they needed to be driven, and I drove in carpools, and I drove back and forth to the Cape from Boston, and I drove everywhere, so I really had to get into that car and drive. And all of a sudden, I discovered that I could drive, and I could make good time on the road. It was my philosophy that you should just get wherever you're going as fast as you can. However, the policemen sometimes stop me. And I do honor our policemen. I believe in the blue, but sometimes when they stop you on the road, they aren't so nice. Well, the speeding tickets began to pile up, and I got to hiring lawyers, but what I discovered is when you go into the hearing, even though they take it off your insurance, they still keep it in a pile. And my pile got to be about this big, with about 30, I now have 36 speeding tickets. That was over a period of 20 or 30 years, though. Really only one a year. Although on a couple, one or two trips, I got two on one trip. But anyway, and I also know a lot of courthouses in the area. Stoughton has kind of an old court. Brockton has a really nice new courthouse. The guy in Wareham, he's a very nice guy, and he usually lets you off. And in New Bedford, they're not so nice over there. And somehow also I have a habit of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. One cold, miserable January night, I was in New Bedford, and it had been snowing, and it was wet, and it was dark, and I was going along that street that goes north, Somethingville Street, and I was actually coming south back to the road, and I forgot to stop at a stop sign, and some mean guy got me. Well, it got to be kind of serious. There was one other guy in Falmouth who got me 3 times coming on to Thomas Landis Road, and I was very glad that someone told me that once he was cleaning his gun and he shot himself in the foot, and I thought that served him right. But anyway, in 2013, it was actually 2012, late December 2012, I went to New York to go skiing with my daughter, and we were skiing, and it was 3:30 on New Year's Eve, the afternoon of New Year's Eve. And I was skiing with my grandson and my son-in-law. And they wanted to do a last run. Well, I didn't want to too much, but anyway, I went down the hill and I hit some ice and I broke my leg. And in 2013, I broke my leg into 13 pieces on New Year's Eve. They sent me to Albany Medical Center. They put me in room 513, and at 9:13 on New Year's morning, they put my leg back together. And they did a really good job, and I'm very grateful. And that January, I spent most of the month in the hospital. And when I came home, I was non-weight bearing, which I never even knew what that was before, but you can't step on your leg for 12 weeks, which is really a pain. And so I got a wonderful letter in the mail saying, you did not show up for a hearing for speeding, and you're going to lose your license in April. So I sat in my wheelchair and I called on the telephone. I tried to call somebody, but nobody ever answered the phone. So I decided I had to find a friend to take me up to the Plymouth court. And I did get a friend. She drove me up. She dumped me out the car and dumped my wheelchair there and drove off. And I had to get myself into the courthouse. I found a clerk who was kind enough to reschedule my hearing for a few weeks later. So a few weeks later I went, and I was still in my wheelchair, and it had been advised that I hired a lawyer. So my lawyer came in her fur coat and her high heels from up around Raynham. And we waited, and finally the person that they assigned for the hearing happened to be the mother of the lawyer's secretary, and this lawyer just knew everybody, so that was great. I was free. So now I decided that I really need to be good and slow down, and I did for about 4 years until last fall. My daughter lives in Long Island, and you have to drive down 95 past New York City and over the Throgs Neck Bridge. And so I visited her, came back, and it was a beautiful Tuesday. The traffic was very light, and somehow I managed to go 90 most of the way home. And I got away with it until I got to Westport on 195, and he was a mean cop, and he gave me a ticket, and that was a real bummer. So the hearing finally, and I decided I better take my local lawyer with me this time, and the hearing was on March 2nd of 2018, and if you'll remember, that was the day of one of those northeasters, and the rain was raining and the wind was blowing, and I had to go to Fall River. So I get to Fall River, and in Fall River, there's no parking at the courthouse. So I had to go down the street somewhere and walk back in my slicker. And I get to the courthouse, and I thought I should bring some water and an iPad because maybe I'd have to be sitting around for a while. Well, the guard says, you can't come in here with those, so I got to go walk all the way down the street again to put them in my car. And I get back to the courthouse. And at that point, I'm sort of close to tears. But we go into the hearing, and there's a woman, and then there's a state police guy. And they hear my story, and they say, you are a chronic speeder, and we're not going to let you off. And we pleaded and pleaded because, honestly, I don't know what I could do if I didn't have my license and I couldn't drive anywhere. It would really be very tragic. And we pleaded, and I do have to thank my lawyer because finally after a lot of pleading, and the state cop said, well, we can't let you off. We've had so much trouble with our overtime that we just can't have another infraction. And but finally, they put me on probation, and I'm now on probation until March 1st of 2019. And so far I've gotten through April, May, June, and part of July. And I'm going to try to be good and slow down.